Welcome back as we are discussing food security and hunger as the world is marking World Food Day, October 16. And here on ENC in this today's special, we've got the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu. We've got Gerald Bourke from the World Food Programme, Vishwas Satgar, the chairperson of the South African Food Sovereignty Campaign, and associate researcher and author from Wits Tracey Ledger. Now, a short while ago, words like masturbation were mentioned by Vishwas, saying that that's where we're headed, the humanitarian crisis. There's a need to reform the market. The food system is flawed. We have the wrong priorities. And the minister was saying we have to work together across the board with everybody creating the right access in the right places. But Gerald Bourke from World Food Programme, you said earlier 52 million people who live in Southern Africa, outside of South Africa, and then you add that 13 million number that we are hearing about in South Africa, are also facing hunger. I mean, the region is in trouble, Gerald.
Indeed, and to your point, South Africa, of course, is a regional breadbasket. For the World Food Programme, it is a significant source of the commodities that we use to support our operations in the region. So when South Africa is in trouble in terms of drought and being able to produce less, it has significant repercussions.
And not being able to feed its own people.
Indeed. So, for example, end of last year, early this year, because of the crisis in Zimbabwe, we had to significantly increase the number of people we were supporting in that country. Because of the drought afflicting South Africa, elsewhere in Southern Africa, indeed elsewhere in Africa, we found it very difficult to procure sufficient food on this continent for our operation in Zimbabwe. This is just one example. So we were having to go to Asia, to Latin America, to Europe, to buy food, to ship it to Durban or Beira, and then truck it into Zimbabwe. And you can imagine the sort of additional costs that imposes and the logistical challenges it throws up.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. Now, the right to food is enshrined in the South African Constitution. We've had that. And the question, though, is how do you execute that right to food? Tracy, I mean, people are now saying we have a right to food, and people are protesting around this issue now. So people's voices are rising. We've had protests in South Africa for service delivery, but there's never been such a focus as to what there is now about the right to food. Am I right?
Yes. I think that what has happened is that even though we have a constitutional right to food, South Africans, by and large, have never demanded that right. We've never seen civil society protests and community protests around the right to food in a way we've seen protests around housing or water or sanitation. But I think that what has happened is this is one of the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, is suddenly people have become much more aware of their right to food, and they're starting to demand that the state delivers that right.
So how do you execute a right to food then? Do I grow my own food garden in the backyard? But what if I live in an apartment? How does it work?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, that's the million-dollar question. And a lot of the food security responses from government have been around getting people to grow their own food, which is a very partial response indeed. It doesn't address the underlying issues. It doesn't address the shortage of protein. It doesn't address people in urban areas. So the question is, how do we make the right to food materialize? It's not an easy question to answer, but the first place to start is to acknowledge that the state has a responsibility to start thinking about how it makes this right universally accessible to all South Africans.
Minister, before I allow you to answer that, what the government will be thinking, how do we make this right to food a universal right? How does the state enable it? I want to bring in Vishwas. What's your view? How do we do this? Because from what Tracy is saying, it's not just planting a garden in your backyard. It's more than that. The state has to enable it somewhat, enable the real execution, practical, pragmatic execution of this constitutional right to food.
No, absolutely. And yes, it is a complex issue. From our standpoint, the first important shift that has to happen is a recognition that we need a structural transformation of the food system. It's in that context we are calling for a legislative approach to food sovereignty to affirm the right to food in the country. We have made this case throughout 2018. We've made it now. We have our own People's Act that introduces democratic planning around the food system. It rethinks our agricultural practices in terms of agroecology. It thinks about land very differently in terms of its social function. It thinks about seeds very differently as part of the commons, etc. So that's the first structural shift that has to happen. And the government, the state, together with civil society, needs to use this moment to bring about this structural shift. The second point to make is around the basic income grant. We support the call, and we're appealing to the minister here as well, to please continue the top-ups, continue the COVID relief grant. But more importantly, the minister did signal in the midst of the crisis that she was investigating a universal, non-means tested basic income grant. That's a very important democratic systemic reform for the country. And we really believe that the time has come to streamline, to consolidate our welfare architecture and to improve the social grant system, not reverse gains, but improve it with the non-means tested basic income grant. We believe these two measures, food sovereignty, legislation driven from below, together with the universal basic income grant, can shift us towards a substantive realization of the right to food in our constitution.
Minister, how do you respond to that? There's an idea on the table, and apparently you've already started one of those processes. What do we need to shift to make sure that the food system delivers the right to food to millions of South Africans who are hungry every day?
I think there are already existing plans of government through the different departments, whether it's the Department of Agriculture with the special food program, whether it's the community development program through the Department of Public Works, whether it's the comprehensive social security program through our department, and the work that we have to do in a coordinated manner. You see, I think everyone keeps saying, and we ourselves are saying, South Africa has got the best policies in place. We've got a good constitution. Our biggest challenge is the development of implementable plans that can also be impactful on our communities. So the recent launch, or the launch that has happened now in this 6th administration of focusing at district development level is going to enable us to go down and look at issues from that minute point of view. And so all the beautiful plans that we have and the constitution, we now need to strengthen the local government structures to be able to assist our communities. We've got to make sure that the provincial government, which in short, all I'm saying is that there's got to be more capacity and capability of the state and the capacity of the state to support our people at a local level. We've got all these plans. They are there. They just need us to be able to implement them.
What are you going to do? Sorry, Minister, just on that score before you continue. You got the plans. We need to implement them. What's going to change in your view, or what must change for that implementation to be effective?
What must change is first and foremost the acknowledgement of the fact that we've got good plans, but we're not implementing those plans accordingly, efficiently as we are supposed to do. And we're saying the 6th administration and this president has already been in the forefront of saying, I've heard your stories, I've heard your plans. I want you to come here and be accountable to me about how you are going to be able to implement those plans. And he's broken it down to say, don't talk to me about just the national plans. Talk to me about the local plans. Hence his decision to say he's going to take us as ministers to be champions in districts. I, for instance, am part of the championing at Lindiwe Zulu. And Lindiwe Zulu in the Free State is one of those poorest local government that you can find. You find that in terms of jobs, there are no jobs. In terms of the mining, that used to happen in the past is not happening. So it's about finding alternatives that can be able to support our people. It's time we really found a way of working together, because my view, and I think it's a view of government overall, that at this point in time as South Africans, let's look at what COVID-19 has taught us. Let us look at what is it that we can do different. Let me just make a quick example. Technology must also be at the center of what we do right now. Look at the 350 rands, a social grant that we gave. Nobody went to any office of SASSA to go and make an application because we used technology, which therefore means in all aspects of our lives, we must also be able to use technology. But from a Department of Social Development point of view, every department and every action plan is important for us, because we think that if we are about the well-being of each and every citizen, but of course focusing on the most vulnerable, we need the in delivery of their services in order to assist the people who are our beneficiaries.
Minister, as we conclude our discussion here, I'm going to ask you this. Does government have a plan to stop this mass starvation that is being warned about currently?
Yes, government does have a plan. Government has had a plan, by the way. Can I just go back to the fact that we have the National Development Plan, which was applauded, which was supported, which was worked on together with everybody else.
But the plan, Minister, does not seem to have worked, with up to 13 million South Africans going hungry every day.
No, I don't think, Dan, I don't think it is correct to say the plan hasn't worked. What I can say is that the plan and its implementation has not been adequate. Hence, even today, the president will be speaking, for instance, in the afternoon, the president is going to be speaking about the economic reconstruction plan. That plan is not about business. That plan is not about those that are doing business. That plan is about how do we turn around the economy in order for people to be able to do things for themselves, sustain themselves. How do we support small businesses? How do we support cooperatives? How do we support local production? This plan is the plan that is a build-up from previous plans, but this plan has got to be very practical, and I'm calling on everyone to listen to the president this afternoon as he speaks. But what I would like to say, we have to work with each other. We have not to be pointing fingers at each other. Let us correct each other where there are mistakes. And I'm saying it here. We are prepared to listen. Even the panel members who are here today, mark my words, I can get their details. We have to work together, because as a nation, we are confronted by a challenge that is facing the entire region in terms of food,
we are confronted by mass starvation, according to Vishwas, a humanitarian crisis. Tracey, parting words from you as we conclude?
I don't think we have a plan. So the point is that 99% of South Africans access their food through markets. Neither the Zero Hunger Program, nor the National Development Plan, nor any of the other plans has anything to do with what goes on in the food markets. There's no plan to reform food markets. If we continue to ignore markets, the role of markets in hunger, we will never address the situation.
Vishwas, your parting words?
Mass starvation is with us in the context of COVID-19. Climate crisis is worsening. Tomorrow we are going to Parliament. We are having an online assembly with the Speaker of Parliament. We'll be handing over a climate justice charter. Our central demand in this is that we've got to build a food system controlled by the people. We call it a food sovereignty system. The time has come.
Gerald Bourke, from a World Food Programme, I mean, you don't operate in South Africa, but you've listened, you've participated. When you're hearing the challenges that we are facing here in the country in addressing food security and creating and enabling the right to food that's enshrined in our Constitution, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, I think the Minister certainly alluded to it. Hunger, whether it's Southern Africa, whether it's globally, is a huge problem. It's a growing problem. The need for solidarity is ever more compelling. There are a lot of agents, a lot of players who have a contribution to make. So we all must pull together if we are to meaningfully address at this huge and growing problem of hunger and food insecurity.
Solidarity is required. Market reform is required. We need a new system. We need the right priorities. Minister Lindiwe Zulu saying there is a plan, but it's not been effectively implemented. Well, the situation remains. 13 million South Africans go to bed hungry every day. COVID-19 has worsened their plight. Will the implementation of the plan that the minister talks about change their plight? Well, the future will tell. But for now, Southern Africa, not just our country, is facing a huge humanitarian food crisis. Thanks for being with us for this Today Special.